And hello boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It's your host Marley Startled, and I have just finished the DLC for Gates of Hell, the Talvisota campaign where you play as the Finnish, and today will be the review of the main campaign. So just cover the main missions, a brief overview of each mission, and how I feel about each mission and the campaign in general towards the end. Generally speaking, I've come away with mixed feelings about the DLC. On one hand, there are some very good levels in the DLC, and there are some really awful levels, coupled with bugs that make it almost impossible to win some of the missions if you're faced with too many losses, and the general feeling of some of the levels can become very tedious, especially on harder difficulties. Now, full disclosure, I've played the campaign on normal. If you're looking for a more harder defense, such in the Mannheim line, or if you want a more greater challenge in, say, the Gambit, then of course you will want to play on hardcore. Hard doesn't really change it enough to be noticeable, but for the most part, through Ice and Fire and the Northern Gambit will actually have a general sense. It'll be more enjoyable, more cinematic. Primarily, the campaign focuses more on a tactical aspect, with small numbers of very good Finnish troops against large numbers of Soviet early armor and Soviet soldiers, where you've got to play tactically and sort of steal weapons from the enemy to survive. However, this tends to become rather tedious because it's the worst aspect of the Men of War / Cold Arms. It's the tactical aspect, because as the nature of the game, one shot or one bad shot can result in your entire level being ruined and being impossible to win the game. Sometimes that random aspect can make the game really fun and enjoyable and cinematic. Other times, especially in this campaign, with your one bit of armor that you need to use to, or one bit of artillery which you need to use to win the level, you have to load scum basically. There are some really bad levels in this and some really good levels, but without further ado, let's go through them, shall we? So this level, Ice and Fire, is the first level of the DLC for the Finnish campaign. Sees you defend the Mannheim line. Initially, it's really cinematic with the amount of artillery barrages, limited numbers, and the hordes of enemy armor coming down the road. However, as the game progresses, it becomes a bit. You can start to see the scripting, like although you see some light armor come forward and things so on. Generally speaking, there'll be big, somewhat momentary pauses between each offensive where you basically do nothing. I was hoping for a larger sense of scale. When I first saw the artillery barrages, I was a very happy man, because I was expecting hordes of screeching Soviets to come running down the road. What really happens is sort of a piecemeal drip of mass offensives, which are very bottlenecked down this main road here. Generally speaking, this is where the game starts to show you the nature of the DLC, where your two main anti-tank guns are the only things really stopping the Soviet advance. If you lose those two guns, you effectively might as well just reload the game, because you're going to lose. So in consequence, you spend most of the time just micromanaging your anti-tank guns and hoping they don't get hit. If they get hit, you just load scum, because the game is more or less lost. Equally, although it is a large sense of scale, normally the Soviets will only attack on one part of the line. So they'll attack from the north, then they'll attack from the west, then they'll attack from the east, meaning that you'll never have this massive sense of a generalised offensive. Equally, although you have all these strong defensive lines and you have this rear defensive line, you don't get any more troops or reinforcements, and so there's no point holding the rear lines. And in consequence, most of the game is spent just holding the front line and microing the anti-tank gun and knocking armor out. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some really good cinematic moments. For example, when the SMK attacks on the eastern flank and it begins to overrun the position, but then again, there's no follow-through, there's no climax. When I saw that SMK, that heavy tank, come through, I was expecting then for a massive general offensive across the entire front, or something that would really end this level with a bang. But unfortunately, that really just doesn't occur. And so instead, you spend most of your time just sitting here, microing, and occasionally reloading the armor. Really, you'll spend most of your time clicking E and microing this anti-tank, because if you lose it, you've got to load scum, because you've just basically lost your ability to hold off against the Soviet invaders. And see, this is just the reconnaissance part, so this is just a reconnaissance wave, but with the second wave, on hardcore, which I'm showing you the hardcore version, you will see hordes of Soviet infantry. But again, it's very centralized to one part of the front, and it doesn't give you that feeling of scale. It's just a horde of infantry that will get bogged down and mowed down, and the level isn't difficult as long as you micro the anti-tank piece. Although I did enjoy this level, I enjoyed that cinematic artillery barrage, and I did enjoy those waves, I didn't really feel much of a challenge as long as I kept the anti-tank guns alive. And so this level is a sort of repetitive process of just holding, waiting, knocking out whatever tanks turn up, waiting some more, and then knocking out more tanks. Now, what I'd hoped is perhaps a more larger scale, more anti-tank guns, more concrete bunkers, more defense in depth, and hordes of tanks along the entire front. But as you can see, it'll attack from one part, and then they'll attack from another part over here on the west, and you'll just see that process over and over and over. It isn't a bad level. It's quite fun if you want to get your cinematic moments in, but it just feels like they didn't do enough with this scenario. They could have done a whole lot more. There's a later scenario called the Northern Gambit, which would have fit perfectly with the sort of Mannerheim line. And they could have had two versions of that, one for the Mannerheim line and one for this level. But unfortunately, they never got around to it. Unfortunately, all you get is this. And as you can see, this isn't difficult. As long as you get that anti-tank piece alive, you can just sort of sit back. Bear in mind, I've got this on hardcore difficulty right now, and just watch as the MG gun moves things down. And so it's a tad underwhelming. In terms of difficulty changes, on hard and hardcore, they remove the anti-tank infantry, and that means you have only these two pieces of anti-tank. This effectively means that for the most of this really sets the tone for most of the game. You have most of the DLC, you have two good bits of kit, and if you lose it, the game is over. So because it's hardcore, these guys have actually been able to infiltrate the line somewhat. But again, with some micro, it's just not much of a challenge. And even if they did break through, because there's no Finnish reinforcements and because the scale is so small, it just doesn't scratch that itch of a massive offensive. This could have been an hour worth of them pushing through this line, a second line being formed over here, more anti-tank pieces, another line being formed, a mass assault on the east with the SMK that knocks the flank over. It just feels like they didn't do enough with this DLC or with this level, and in consequence, although it's a fun level to play and just sit and watch as your Finnish boys just mow down the infantry, it leaves you wanting more, and in consequence, it's just it's a fun level, but it's not. It's a fun mission, but it's not. It's not the Mannerheim line. It's not what you want it to be. You want a bit more, especially because I play a lot of modded levels, a lot of modded maps on the custom workshop, and when I'm comparing this level to say some of the custom maps, so like the Stalingrad map or a couple of other custom maps like the Iwo Jima campaign and so on, I just feel this doesn't bring any more to the table, if I'm honest. Equally, because of the manpower restrictions that you'll feel for most of the game, you'll spend most of the time running around with your medics, healing up soldiers, rather than just getting in and enjoying the action. Which sets the tone of the game. You have not a lot of forces, so you've got to be very careful with them, and then you just got to just hold and just conserve. And if you lose your troops, then the game is over. If you lose your big pieces, you may as well just reload level. So really, this it is a bit of a it's a fun level, but it's not. It could have been more. It could have been more. I'd give it a 7 out of 10, a 7.5, maybe even an 8, because I did enjoy it playing it the first time. But I just thought it was poorly delivered in terms of that sense of scale. Now I'm just going to show the next wave. The waves do slightly progressively get stronger. So it leaves you thinking, okay, this is just a foreplay. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. There's going to be more offensives. There's going to be wider offensives. But the sad truth of the matter is, apart from slight changes to the armor, going up say medium tanks, and the SMK push on the eastern flank with one SMK, which is a heavy tank, it's never followed through. It's that teasing of something massive going to occur, but something that never really comes to fruition. Let's say hello to this boy first. Let's see how long it takes for him to get over here. There we are. So this level, the Veto Road, excuse me, has you moving 2 squads of Finnish troops in to ambush or to wipe out a Russian convoy that has been slowed down and stuck. Through it, you're equipped with initially an anti-tank rifle, followed by a load of mortars and a load of very equipped infantry. Generally, the level starts out from a gradual tactical perspective where you've got to tactically maneuver your troops and rely on your mortars to shake the enemy position, using your anti-tank rifle to knock out any light tanks that appear. That eventually culminates you in stealing some Russian armor and then just wiping the map. It's a very slow, methodical level where, once again, you've got to really micro your troops and micro your mortars, and if you don't do so, which is a common thing throughout the Finnish campaign, you've just got to reload. Because you just will not get any more troops, and so you won't have enough troops to man it. Generally speaking, once you do get to the tanks, it does become a bit of a fun. That's the sort of the payoff where you've done the gradual tactical move, and now you're going to have some bit of fun with wiping out what's left of the Russians. It was a fun level, but some of the design mechanics I don't really understand. So you have these secondary objectives, such as capture the 5 enemy wheeled vehicles and capture 5 enemy tanks. And if you're used to the old Men of War, it gives you the impression that this would carry over to the next level, like Silo Heights, the level before it. If you plant bombs and blow up enemy armor and installations, it would help you in the level after. So you can spend up to an hour, maybe an hour and a half, moving, refueling, repairing, and sending all this captured enemy equipment to the corner of the map to get rid of it, to get the secondary objectives complete, for no reason, because it doesn't carry over to the next level. So this whole secondary part is pointless. In terms of the game level construction, I did find it very enjoyable, going from one area to the next, wiping out these sort of isolated contingents of Russian troops. But there's some design choices I'm a bit confused of. For example, I don't see any sort of Russians even attempt to try and get in the armor, or the potential risk of alerting the enemy, causing them to resort to getting onto armor pieces. That would have been another rather interesting take on this level, where you've got to attack parts of the front quickly and rapidly, so that the information doesn't spread elsewhere, resulting in an unwinnable level with soldiers getting into the armor and that. So, for example, if I attacked over here, because it's far away, the Russian soldiers wouldn't be able to hear it over here, so they wouldn't get into their armor. But if I, of course, attacked over here and took too long and there was an enemy armor convoy behind it, they could have got in their armor and it could have been GG. That could have made it a much more interesting level where you've got to sort of organise where to attack. But that's never really done. Instead, you sort of come across 1 or 2 occupied tank positions, such as here and over here, mostly light tanks, and you just sort of wipe them out and then get in some of the stolen tanks and drive through it. It's another micro-focused level. If you lose your tanks to such of these positions, like these positions, then of course you've got to reload. It's not a large-scale engagement. It's just another low-down tactical level. It just becomes a bit of a slog, which again is a common trend in this DLC, where you, with your small group infantry, has to sit down with mortars, being micro refueled or rearmed constantly as they just wade through hordes of infantry positions with a mortar fire. It's a fun level, and I did enjoy actually the repairing aspect when I first thought it meant something for the next level, but again, it relies on the tactical aspect of Colt Arms or the Men of War engine, and as you know, the AI is pants, the pathfinding is pants, and so therefore the tactical aspect is probably the worst aspect of the game, so you'll spend a lot of time struggling with the Finnish soldiers or to move through the woods without getting stuck, moving, unsticking supply trucks and generally tearing your hair out. Yeah, as a level, I thought it was a unique take. I did enjoy the level. I enjoyed the aspect of it, but of course, it could have been on a much larger scale. Again, we could have had a load of Finnish soldiers there, a load of Finnish soldiers there, filled with mortars. Maybe some AI Finnish soldiers attacking from the north, and then of course your controlled soldiers attacking from the south. Just having this mass engagement trying to knock out this convoy, but instead it's a quieter tactical level, as you can probably tell. I mean, this is me coming towards the end of it, where you just gradually move forward, pick off few contingents, get in the tank, and then just win the level. Altogether, I would give it a solid 7 out of 10. It's a fun level. It's a different, slow compared to the Mannerheim line, but it's again a tactical slow level, which can get frustrating because you're constantly battling with the AI to pathfind and so on and so forth. Again, it just feels like another case of missed potential. So this level is Stalins Big Guns. Now, Stalins Big Guns is by far the worst level ever made in this game so far. It has you with a squad of about 15 soldiers having to first initially infiltrate or assault this part of the line without any anti-tank, without any sort of armour. Move through here through hordes of infantry, which is all set up on defensive lines, and then after taking or getting to this part of the objective, assaulting down here, trying to take the Stalin's big gun. As you can tell, it's a big boy. Hello, big boy. But bear in mind, there's mortars, more infantry along these defensive positions, and there's of course hordes of infantry there to eventually attack this village, which is filled with armor, which is filled with mortars, artillery pieces, and so on, to eventually hold it against waves of Russian attacks, which come from the west, and an amphibious attack. It is Cold Supper during the day on steroids. I got the guy who made Cold Supper, sat him down and said, "Listen, Ivan, we want you to make something better than Cold Supper." And he said, "Don't worry, comrade, give me 6 shots of vodka and some crocodile." And they made this. They made this. You have 15 troops against hordes of Soviet infantry, Soviet gun emplacements, mortars, machine guns, armored machine guns, tanks, and you don't get any more. You don't get any more. You clear this area out, and then with whatever troops left, you can literally soft lock yourself just by losing too many troops early on. So look at this. And this is me not even paying attention because I'm just doing a review. But oh look, I've lost one troop. That's already what 10% of my troops to play with, and it's just really bad because it's just you go through all this pain thinking there will be a payoff, but there's no real payoff. You just end up taking this gun and you're like, okay, now attack this village. And the gun, although is fun to fire, it's so slow and the reloaders are so obnoxious that it is the area of impact just isn't enough to clear the village. And so what happens is this sort of, can I spot this guy to blow this up? What happens is basically this. You sneak into the village. I mean, come on. Okay. You sneak into the village, but you can't afford to lose any troops. And so you sneak in the village, an enemy gun emplacement finds you, mows you down, and then you're like, okay, I've lost a troop. Then you try and get your Stalin gun to fire on this position. It misses, and then you've got to wait about 60 seconds before you can actually do anything about, reloading and firing. It means there's slow drag where you can't really put troops into the village to spot. properly to fire on the Stalin's gun, and you can't really just use the Stalin gun to blindly snipe because you've got limited ammunition. So you just sort of skulk around the peripheries of the level, just trying to temporarily spot the target so your Stalin gun can fire, miss, reload, miss, reload, fire again in the space of 3 minutes, while enemy armour and hordes of infantry come at you with the 10 troops or 5 troops you've got left because they've all been mowed down in the previous part of the level, to eventually take the village. And then afterwards you do get some support in the terms of Finnish armour, but by then the hard part of the level is completed, and it's just a completely awful level because again it's focused on the tactical aspect, the fact you can't lose troops as Finland, and you've got to use stolen enemy equipment, but the stolen enemy equipment early on is garbage, and the lack of, and it leads to a sort of gameplay style of this sort of poke head out, get shot, run away, poke head out, like this micromanaged tedium that it just isn't a very fun level. The amount of times I had the save scum on the right hand side trying to sneak in because the RNG machine gun Stalin truck of doom decided not to run into me but shoot from a healthy distance away was ridiculous, and it just is a completely dismal experience to play as. They could have made this level so much better. They could have provided some reinforcements, say if you get over here for the next part of the level. And it leads to the YOLO tactics, where you just save, YOLO a captured Stalin truck if you can, capture, destroy the mortar, and then YOLO over here, and just try and YOLO. And if you lose that one bit of equipment that is the centerpiece of your strategy, you've got to reload, and that is the general sensation you get from the Finnish campaign. A bit of captured equipment or a bit of equipment you get at the start that you cannot afford to lose, and if you lose it, you've just got to reload. And it just means it's a very unforgiving, uninteresting level, and the payoff isn't enough. Like a 60-second gun that misses with an explosive shell that is mediocre at best does not really warrant any interest. I can look at it, this takes so long to move. You start with 70 rounds. I haven't even cleared the village yet, and it just becomes a slog because you just sit there with your Finnish troops just mowing down Soviet troops with just waiting, just slowly progressing and hoping that the random mortar doesn't wipe out all your troops. See, missed again. I can't even show you the extent of the firing because of the nature of the gun. It's just a piece of garbage. So really, I feel the failure of this level is a failure of organisation. They've given you the hard bit at the start, and there should be a payoff. Once you get the Stalin gun, you should get the Finnish reinforcements during the Stalin gun phase, and then you can do a combined offensive with your Finnish armour and the Stalin gun to clear the village. Then it can be a much more enjoyable game. You've got the troops to spare, you've got the resources to spare to spot, you've got the Stalin gun to wipe out and enjoy the set piece firepower, but you don't get that. You get the reinforcements right after all the heavy lifting is completed, and that's just a badly organized level. Now, can I get a shot off on this? Well, it's actually doing anything. There's that, yeah. There you are. Here's an example of the explosion. Now, if there's something hidden behind it, if you aim further back, it becomes a bit of a tedious affair because it'll just keep on missing. Like, I'm trying to hit that, I've missed. Whatever's in here will probably still be intact. I've got to aim again, fire again, and I don't have any proper equipment for my troops to attack it myself, so I've just got to rely completely on that Stalin gun. It also has some... This is where you start seeing the bugs or the flaws and the levels start to appear, especially with Fog of War on. You'll clear the village and spend the next 5 to 10 minutes wandering around trying to get the objective to be completed, because there's some enemy troops in the north which you can't spot, which need to be killed as well before the next phase begins. And it just leaves you with a sour taste in your mouth. So once you've cleared the village and you get the Finnish reinforcements, you can start having a jolly good battle with the reinforcing Russian units. But you're at that stage, you're so pissed off with the level in the game that that quote-unquote payoff part just doesn't pay off. And then it finishes with a second-rate amphibious invasion with Soviet meme machine gun tanks that really aren't a threat. And with the occasional one bugging up there, so which you've got to go and chase and blow up to actually finish the level. That it just feels like it was badly it had the wrong structure. It was badly structured, and is not an enjoyable level to play because it focused on the tactical aspect, the weakest aspect of the Men of War engine. It combines this scarcity mentality that means that you've got to play extremely cautiously, relying on artillery and captured equipment, which you have to hoard and keep preciously, and culminates into this sort of nightmarish hell where you're just trying to advance, but you get spotted, you get blown up, you restart because you've lost too many troops, and it just ends up being a grind to go through. That just isn't a payoff to warrant the hassle of doing this level. If you want to have an enjoyable time, skip this level. It is an awful, awful level. It is cold supper during the day. Just is not well designed. But enough slagging off this level. We're going to move on to a much funner, better level. So this level, Through the Fire, is a slight improvement upon Stalin's Gun. Instead of having one inaccurate, slow-loading artillery piece, you have three. The level initially starts with you conducting ambushes on Russian convoys, which is quite a fun tactical aspect because you're knocking out these convoys with these anti-tank rifles and these better equipped troops. And then it sees you capturing some artillery pieces and conducting an encircling assault on Russian forces. But the Russian forces have tanks and you do not, and the Russian forces are more numerous than you. And although there's less scarcity in this level, it comes down to what troops can knock out the tanks. And sure, you have more infantry, but the infantry themselves are completely vulnerable to their machine gun emplacements, the enemy armor, and so it comes down to what equipment have I salvaged that can knock out the tanks, and it comes down to the artillery pieces, which are inaccurate, have low amounts of reload, and will have you either shooting repeatedly at these tanks to try and knock them out for between 5 and 6 minutes, constantly missing until you run out of ammo, or has you trying to get close, really, really close to them, just to have a chance of getting a direct hit, which again comes into the theme that then these tanks knock out your armor, or knock out these important pieces, and you've got to reload because those pieces are what you have to rely on to complete the level. So although you don't have as much scarcity in regards to numbers, again you have scarcity in regards to actual equipment you need to complete the level. And it's unfortunately these 3 artillery pieces, which again leads to this rather frustrating gameplay where you send infantry up to spot, hopefully they don't get mowed down by random MG position, and then you've got to fire and forget artillery pieces that constantly miss and generally drive you insane. There are ways to get around it. There's a supply truck over there you can drive around the map to resupply, but once you do get to knock out the initial tanks after a lengthy frustrating time, you can of course repair them and the level becomes much more enjoyable and easier. I say it's a better Stalin's Gun because instead of having a Stalin's Big Gun, you've got 3 Stalin little guns that reload but have less ammo. And again, it's a tactical perspective. You're not going to get large-scale engagements and so on. I've got examples of what I'm demonstrating here. So here we go, I've sent infantry up, here's an MG position. Now, I have no artillery, I've got nothing really to get rid of that. So I would need the artillery pieces, or I need to run away to try and knock that position out. And of course, if my artillery pieces are gone, then well, reload. You aren't standing a chance. You may as well just you may as well just reload. And that's another example of this DLC. It's unforgiving resource scarcity, and the resources they give you tend to be garbage and mediocre. And it's not until later on in the level when you're repairing tanks and so on does the level become enjoyable. When normally at that stage, the level's already coming towards an end. But yeah, altogether, it's not. It's better than Stalin's Gun. Like anything's better. Getting punched in the face is better than Stalin's Gun. I would give this about a 6 out of 10. It's a 6 out of 10. It's a fun initial starting level with a tedious, frustrating centre coming to sort of an easy conclusion. It's another tactical level. A lot of the levels you will see in this DLC are tactical levels, but at least this one is acceptable. At least this one is not just on the wall steroids. So it's a solid 6 out of 10. So this level, the Northern Gambit, sees your 3 Finnish lines try and hold out against successively larger and larger Russian armour pushes, with your main objective to hold the crossroads towards the rear of the map. As the level progresses, of course, the tanks get stronger with IS-2s and ISUs moving forward to knock out the positions. And it leads to a very enjoyable set-piece engagement where you've got to make decisions about what you intend to do. Do you intend to try and move all your troops to the north to try and hold out, or do you intend to buy time in the north while you set up stronger defensives in the centre? And they give you the tools to do that, and this is one of those levels where you don't have the resource scarcity, where you've got the time to call in from Jaegers, where you can really enjoy the engagements and really enjoy the chaos and the panic of when your defensive line starts becoming overrun. It's a very good level. It's a very enjoyable level. Things I will notice sometimes the Panzers do like to automatically go on to free will movement, but it's a really great level. Really sort of saved the mission, the campaign, the Finnish campaign DLC, where after you've held for long enough, your reinforcements can come forward, and then you can try and push them off the positions. And of course, the further you've been pushed back, I think the stronger the rear defensive positions are, with enemy really strong enemy anti-tanks and enemy AA preventing your sort of Blenheim bombs. It's a very fun level. Really enjoyed it. I would recommend playing this on hardcore. I played this on normal and was able to hold most of the front line. And I only really got pushed back to about to this sort of C shape. It's just a good old-fashioned large-scale engagements. Of course, you have an initial preparation phase where you can build up loads of AP mines, set up a load of anti-tank mines. You can call in heavy engineers to build such big fortifications like the tank barriers, and it's just good old-fashioned large-scale engagements where you actually do enjoy the combat and also admire the sensation of strategic decision or tactical decision. Do I withdraw? Do I advance? Do I try and hold the front, or if I try to hold my position's being overrun, what should I call in more troops? And of course, it's those large-scale battles where you can enjoy that one man having the ability to hold the entire front. This should have the Mannheim line should have been a level like this, even if it has to be on one front line, but the aggressively harder amounts of troops, the larger waves, the ability to call in reinforcements, that would have been a wonderful Mannheim line. And so when it compares to this level, the Northern Gambit, you're sort of irritated because you just know how great this level was. And I can't really bash it in the slightest. It's just very, very fun. Really, really fun. Let's try and give another hit on this gun, and let's try a Blenheim if that fails. 1944 on this one, so you have Panzerfaust and things like that, and it's really fun to watch your Panzerfaust troops knock out some IS-1s, I believe. Yeah, IS-1s, and some Land-Lease Churchill's Mark IIIs also turn up, which is pretty amusing. And yeah, it's just there's nothing I can really knock it with. A strong defensive map with which probably closest I compare it to would be Sevastopol in Men of War, but a bit easier. But then again, I played it on normal, not hardcore, so you take that with a pinch of salt. On hardcore, I suspect you'll struggle. But yeah, it's a really enjoyable level with things like this, like the massive explosions, the hordes of tanks rushing on through, getting blocked up, overrunning your isolated units with their Panzerfaust as they sort of slowly trundle up. It's just there's nothing really to say anything wrong against this level. It's a really fun, solid mission that is much better than the stuff I see in the custom workshops, or I would say better than most of the stuff I see in the custom workshops, but not all of them. So I'd give this a solid 8 out of, well, a solid 9 out of 10 really. It's a 9 out of 10 level, and a very fun last-go engagement, which puts it apart, which almost washed the taste of crusty, filthy Stalin's Big Gun filth out of my mouth. I almost did, and I left this level feeling real happy and enjoying it massively. So this level is a bridge too far. This level sees you moving another 15 squad or so troop of elite troops to secure the bridge that's located here before moving in to clear the village. It's initially another resource scarcity level where you only have one squad until you've cleared the village, but then you'll receive reinforcements in the form of this bad boy and this bad boy. It's again a tactical level, small scale level. It has the same issues as Stalins Big Gun, but to a lesser extent, where if you lose a troop, or if one bad shot or one bad mortar hit or one bad enemy tank placement can just wipe you, and it can be very unfair. But this is to a lesser extent because generally you don't struggle as much. There's much more better equipment on the field which you can use to clean out the enemy village, and with those extra reinforcements you can have a pretty enjoyable time. The thing where this level really falls down on is, once again, it's the bugs. There is a massive bug on this level which is a nightmare, which sees you wandering around trying to kill the last Russian soldier so you can move on to the next objective. And towards the end of the level, my playthrough, I had to move what was left of my troops all the way up to the north because there was a couple of tanks and Nurble bugged up in this area, which almost soft-locked my game, which almost meant I couldn't complete it because I'd get too close, I wouldn't be able to spot the Nurble because it's off the map and it'd blow me up. And so I had to eventually move an AT gun over here, and out of pure luck I was able to shoot him from off the map to end the level, which is just disappointing because you'd think a level which you paid for would be functional, it wouldn't be awkward or anything like that. It wouldn't be just, well, it would work. Which is frustrating because you do all this hassle, you build all these defensive lines, and well, and you just about survive, and it's like, oh, okay, game's over. You've been soft locked. Altogether, I couldn't really complain too much about this level. Again, it has the same irritating aspects. It takes the tactical aspect of assaulting the bridge and then moving through with a small group of troops to knock out a superior German force. But this time you've actually got equipment, and you can find equipment that will make your life easier, and you do get some reinforcements much earlier than when compared to Stalins Big Gun. The only point I would make about this level is you do need to do some scavenging. There is a bit of RNG because the enemy tanks you do come across are pretty much unpennable at long range unless you find a certain AT gun which can pen directly in the front. You can find that AT gun, I believe, over here, and you basically use that to knock out the tanks, and that became the MVP. And of course you have to use mines and pre-planning to sort of win this level, otherwise you're going to have a real bad time. It's a pretty enjoyable level. I did enjoy holding the bridge, but again, I like larger scale engagements. I would have liked to see again this level just on a large scale, more troops, more equipment, more defensive lines, more time, and this more than this one convoy. But I understand it's the Finnish campaign, it's not going to be a massive all-out warfare, and I was okay with this level. I was pissed off with Stalins Big Guns, and what really soured the rest of the campaign for me was Stalins Big Guns. So when I saw another tactical level, I was like, for fuck's sake, I've had enough of this garbage. I was really fed up when I got to this level because I was thinking to myself, not another tactical level. Just give me a level where I've got enough troops to sort of macro and I can enjoy the engagements and not have to obsess over the front line. A level like what requires you to again scavenge equipment, which again can lead you to being soft locked if you end up accidentally blowing up too much important equipment, or losing too many troops. So again can basically soft lock you, which again is very unforgiving and leads this sort of save scum, low scum mentality and the micromanagement with the field medic. But it's once you get to that sort of terminal velocity, once you do get that one good bit of equipment which you repair, the level just becomes a clearance job until you get to this stage, and then it slowly gets harder from there. Here's some of the Finnish buoy equipment you can get. So the light tank Landsvark L62 anti-air, and my favourite Brut. Looks happy, so happy to be on there. However, it soured me with the fact it was broken up north. The fact that part was broken has pissed me off. So I'll give this a 6.5 out of 10, a 6.5 out of 10. And an acceptable tactical level, an okay defense level, but easy to get soft locked on, and the bugs and the tedium of having to clear everything and trying to find stuff with the fog of war on, this makes the level, again, just a bit of busy work, which is a shame, but I can't complain. I thought it was an okay level. So, boys and girls, that was the review level by level, or mission by mission, of the Finnish campaign for the Finnish DLC. Altogether, it came out as underwhelming to me. It felt undercooked, poorly structured, but it felt mediocre. There were some diamonds in the rough. There is that Northern Gambit, which is great. There is the Mannheim line, which fails to deliver. Which fails to deliver, but what it delivers is acceptable. Then there's the Stalins Big Gun that is a complete garbage, poorly structured mess. And you've got the bugs that come with a bridge too far, and the tedium of that sort of tactical aspect in terms of through the fire. It's a DLC that tries to promote the feeling of scarcity, of ingenuity, and overcoming numbers and forces stronger than your own through tactics. But the tactical aspect of this game, or of the engine, does not work because it's so buggy and the AIs are so tedious, and it's just it doesn't work the way the level's designed. Defender has the advantage. If defender spots a soldier moving in the field, it will wipe out the entire squad, and RNG mortar will knock you out. And because of that scarcity, the level has become a chore to play because of the lack of numbers and the sheer limitations the engine and the AI has when it comes to sort of tactics or tactical of working by itself. And in consequence, it leaves you sort of a bit disappointed. Unfortunately, there are good levels, but for the most part, they're slow, grinding, tedious, buggy levels as well, which unfortunately isn't really what you want. I don't even know how much this cost me. I just bought it immediately. Let me check. Let me check on Steam. How much did this bad boy cost me? It cost me £13.99. So £13.99. You expect something better out of the custom workshop, don't you? You expect something. I like tactical maps, but you want tactical maps or tactical levels that will be better than the tactical levels in the custom workshop, or what you want, and it just doesn't deliver in that regard. It just doesn't deliver. What saves this DLC? What saves this DLC from the mediocre campaign and the frustrating campaign and the buggy campaign with the few good levels is the fact that it gives you so many new vehicles, so many an entirely new faction, and it gives you the assault missions, and the assault missions, which can be located. Yeah, the skirmish missions will allow you to play skirmishes like out of Assault Squad or Assault Squad 2, which means you've got that sandbox game to play as well, which you can play on multiplayer and with friends, and of course the new skins and so on will help add to the ocean of content that comes from the workshop in terms of custom missions. And so you're not really buying this DLC for the campaign. It's sort of an addition because the campaign's so bad. You're buying it for the skirmishes, you're buying it for the extra faction, you're buying it for the multiplayer, and you're buying it for the custom maps. But as a campaign, it is tedious, underwhelming, and buggy. So, a solid 5 out of 10. Thank you for watching, boys. I hope you enjoyed. I'll do a review of the skirmishes. I'll probably be playing multiplayer skirmishes offline, and I will see you all later.